Okay, so we have our panel here for our breakout. This is going to be exciting, actually. You guys got some rock stars up here. So they're going to introduce themselves and what their focus is and take you guys on a journey. So enjoy.
Hey, is this working? Yeah, that seems to be working. I like this setup. This is very confrontational. I feel like we're very much facing the audience rather than having a panel discussion. So this panel is about bringing brands from the Web 2 space into the Web 3 space. Very, I think, original topic for this week. But let's kick it off by having introductions. Everyone's been at a very long conference. I think you're all interested to know why you should be sitting here for the next 60 minutes and listening to these wonderful people. So if we work from the far end down back to myself, we'll kick off with you, Conrad. Yeah. Who are you and why should everyone care about what you're saying?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you. So my name is Conrad Probst. I'm from Germany. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Properties. Floor 9, if you want to check that out. We do metaverse facilitating for individuals and brands. On the brand side, we work both with Web 3 and Web 2 brands. For Web 2 brands, we typically do shadow consulting, meaning no one will know that we touched that project, but in the end, it looks like they did it all themselves. It's a very nice way of introducing brands and getting them into the space. On Web 3, we are more so looking at uniting a lot of communities on the metaverse, specifically Sandbox, Decentraland, and NFT worlds.
All right. My name is Tim Daniels. I'm the VP of Business Development for Sale, which is an ORM, owner relationship management platform connecting CRM and NFTs to really revolutionize the whole marketing and advertising experience for brands and businesses. We think there's a huge opportunity for all types of businesses in every sector to really start to engage and have more of a synergistic relationship with their consumer base.
Thanks, Tim. My name is Eric Faust. I'm the co-founder and CEO over at Dropper. Dropper is a gaming launchpad and NFT marketplace built on Hedera. I think one of the big things that I think about is this Web 2 to Web 3 jump from a brand perspective is really just an evolution. What we're seeing is, in my world, is big gaming brands, frankly, just trying to integrate into Web3 because they feel like it's inevitable. Whether that's big esport teams, whether that's top streamers, all the way down to developers and publishers, they all kind of feel this inevitability about what's coming next, which is this move into Web3, and that's a little bit about what we do.
I'm Dante, Alston, founder and CEO of HashAxis, which is one of the largest NFT marketplaces for the Hedera Hashgraph. The marketplace trades native Hedera tokens, so any brands can come on and make their NFTs tradable on the marketplace. We also have a self-service tool that allows you to make your NFTs right on the platform and publish those into the Hedera network.
And my name is Alex Russman. I'm a VP and head of the Metaverse Fund at an organization called the HBAR Foundation. So we accelerate the growth of projects building on the Hedera Hashgraph network. And the Metaverse Fund, I have a bit of a like-dislike relationship with that name. It's quite a hypey topic, I think we'll all agree. But the working title was the Consumer Engagement Fund. And really the thesis behind investing in Metaverse projects for the HBAR Foundation is that the users who are going to be moving en masse from Web 2 into Web 3 will be through these B2C metaversal applications, and mainly through engaging with brands. So Hedera Hashgraph, if you're not familiar with it, go up to floor 9. We've got an amazing booth. We've got an amazing team of people who will tell you more about the network. But at high level, we essentially provide a superior technology offering as a network, which is appealing to everyone from individual developers right up to the world's largest organizations. And that comes through a unique technology called Hashgraph. And we also have an amazing governance structure where we have some of the world's leading organizations managing a network in a very transparent, very sort of enterprise-minded, governable manner. So brands, as you can see from the selection of individuals and projects here, are choosing Hedera as a network to build on. It's complete coincidence that 3 of the 4 panelists here are building on Hedera. And Connor is also getting to know the Hedera network, so we're going to test him with some questions about Hedera throughout this panel. But if we could kick off with Dan, actually we'll Can we play a video for Dante
So-
and Hash Access?
One of the things we hear is Hedera has NFTs. People are shocked. So we want to show you what those NFTs can look like.
I'd say the big takeaway from Hash Access is always that it looks beautiful. And I think that's thanks to yourself, Dante.
Thank you.
And your background, though, is in bringing beautiful design to brands. And is that one of the things where you believe we need to knock down some boundaries in getting them to engage with Web3?
Yeah, absolutely. So before I became involved with NFTs, I currently still am the chief operating officer at a company called Blank Square Productions. If you've heard of Blank Square, I know some of you in the audience have. Blank Square shoots some of the largest, most viewed music videos for some of the most popular artists. Not to name drop too much, everyone from Chris Brown, Lil Wayne, Nicki Minaj, whoever your favorite mainstream artist is, we've probably worked with them. And we also work with their labels. My CMO has a joint venture with Warner. So from working with artists, we started transitioning into independent artists. And what we found is with indie artists, they don't have a lot of control over how their art gets monetized. Usually once you sign to a label, the label pretty much runs it from there. So Hedera and DLT as a whole gives you an opportunity to take back how your royalties are routed, see that very transparently. And the reason we chose Hedera specifically is because of the transaction speed. You'll get time to finality as quick as 2.6 seconds, which is basically faster than anything else out there right now. Additionally, it's carbon neutral, and the governance council goes out and buys carbon credits to make it carbon negative. So brands are very concerned with the environmental impacts of making NFTs, especially when they want to scale to making hundreds of thousands or millions of NFTs. And you'll know that when you make an NFT on Hedera, it's going to start off as carbon neutral, and eventually it'll be carbon negative if you remain on that network.
And Conrad, you build on, or you deploy assets on many different DLT networks.
Right.
What do you find are the main concerns that the brands you engage with have about perhaps some of the FUD they might have heard about specific networks? Do they have fears or specific demands from you?
In a lot of instances, those brands have very little to no judgment about any of the blockchains. Most of the times they are looking for cheap gas fees, because that's one thing that I've definitely heard about. The other times they are looking to scale up with that blockchain. So what happens if we invite all of our audience? The brands we work with have millions and millions of followers and billions in revenue. So they look for that scalable case, right? What if, hey, Conrad, I've heard about that sunflower game on Polygon and that crashed the network. Would that happen to us if we use that chain? Because we heard good things about that chain, right? Without name dropping any. Hedera is a beautiful chain. Right, they are in a position to look at things from the upset that users had previously and from a position of scalability. And if those two marry, they are very much non-fixated on anything, really. We are suggesting what makes sense for them. And again, it's many chains, because case per case, many chains have different use cases for those brands.
And today's quite an exciting day. Aside from the fact it's my birthday, I'll just throw that
birthday.
in there.
Let's give a round of applause. He's turning 30 today. It's a big one.
Okay. Yeah, I'm turning 30 at an NFT conference. I've peaked, basically. This is true.
This is your moment, Alex.
But we have announced a really, really exciting partnership at the HBAR Foundation with a brand new AAA gaming Web3 studio called Lithos, founded by the PlayStation studio head, as well as his leading creative director, John Garvin, who developed Days Gone and other huge PlayStation franchises. And they really want to work with us because of that stability of the network, because of the high throughput, because of the huge kind of, not just the environmental narrative we have, but really the sustainability ecosystem we're building, working with people like EDF to actually define the standards around carbon credits. But gamers, they want to have a really good gaming experience. They don't want to feel like they're being over-monetized. They are very suspicious of NFTs. We've seen a huge amount of backlash to NFTs recently. And Eric, you come from a gaming space. You're building a platform for a launchpad for both gamers and game developers and esports streamers.
Yeah, absolutely, Alex. And I think here's a story for you guys. 'Cause I think one of the best ways to understand what's happening in the whole gaming world is based on a story that happened with our company last year. We were originally built on Polygon. We launched a kid named Clix. If you don't know who Clix is, he's probably one of Fortnite's biggest streamers. He gets like 10 to 15,000 people watching him on a Tuesday night. So we originally deployed on Polygon, and we were very surprised with the big pushback. And the big pushback was, there's a barrier to entry to purchase NFTs, and I think you're seeing a big change around that, even just if you walk around this conference. But the second piece, and where he got almost more backlash, was essentially the environmental piece. It was the fact that for whatever reason, the gaming community has a strong desire to support essentially environmentally friendly projects, and we were really surprised. That was not something that we were expecting. So we originally launched this on Polygon, and we learned really quickly that this in gaming, that is something that matters, specifically when we're integrating NFT technology. I think that's the biggest thing. There is a narrative out there that exists in the blockchain space that NFTs and just crypto in general is a high energy consumption product. And the fact that is a problem for an adoption. That is like probably in my world, in the gaming world, that's the number one thing that stands in our way from getting gamers to, from traditional Web 2 into Web 3. Now, with that being said, there's also the skepticism piece, right? So it's also trying to say, how do we create something that matters to the gaming consumer? And I think what we've really figured out, with the help of Alex and the folks over at the HBAR Foundation, is that I think the future is not just going to be built by this narrative around buying and selling NFTs for as almost like a game. I think it's going to be built on sort of this real digital world application, and the only way that we're going to do that is with sustainable technology. And that was something that when I came into this space, it was something I didn't think about, but it's something that really matters, and we learned a lot about just on that one NFT drop.
Yeah, and on sustainability, you don't have to take our word for it. There's been a scientific study done by University College of London that proved Hedera uses less energy than several other blockchain technologies. I don't have the whole list, but you can go look up that study for yourself.
And that really is what, at least from my experience, what brands want to see. They want to be able to tick that box and know for sure that down the line, if their consumers ask them, okay, what is the impact on the environment of this technology? What are the broader repercussions? They have the answers there, and it is something that they can just get on with deploying their business. And in terms of a very broad range of businesses, so sales started out as a CRM solution, Tim. And maybe you can talk about that transition from CRM to ORM. And it'd be nice if you named dropped some of the brands that your sale works with in both sides of your Web 2 and Web 3.
Yeah, well, I think you really hit it on the head right there. It's about being environmentally friendly, right, and cost effective. And I think the fact is there is no other chain that I have seen that has the predictable fee structure that these guys do, and really the transaction volume that you can do, right? It's I think 10,000 transactions a second. And so you think from the advertising and marketing perspective, right? It's all about mass consumption and getting the word out there. And so having Hedera, right, as the backbone of that whole process really turbocharges how we can start to help brands and businesses to really get their whole sort of strategy and I think the real thing is, okay, the marketing right now, right? I always think about, like, the only time I watch commercials is the Super Bowl, right? Because every other time, like, you could go to Netflix, you could go to YouTube, right? We don't want to watch commercials, right? But when we have the opportunity to really start to create a whole nother level of experience that is gamified, engaging, and allows both the businesses and the consumers to interact, I think it's a game changer, right? And so to name drop, we had Hendrick's Gin that basically is utilizing our solution and our marketplace. And one of the nice things about that is now not only can the consumers get NFTs, right, that have utility and value, but they can trade those NFTs, right? And so let's say I don't really want to drink Hendrick's right now, right? But someone out in the audience loves Hendrick's. Well, now all of a sudden I can monetize that and create a whole nother level of experience and value.
I think to some extent, everyone on this panel, our work is really hand-holding interest coming into this Web3 space, into NFTs, and landing it within a safe sort of business-friendly approach. So for you, Conrad, what is the kind of main area of hand-holding you do for brands? Is it in terms of the technical deployment? Is it kind of structuring a business? Is it about that kind of community building aspect?
So yeah, I think, again, case per case, different businesses, different problems or worries. Mainly, definitely the tech side is very challenging to them, and that's something they don't understand, that they don't want to touch ever, right? And smart contracts, we have not heard of that. We have no expertise, no capacity in the teams. So that's definitely always part of those packages that we do. Community management could be, right? A lot of them don't know how Discord works. They've never touched Discord as a brand really before, right? And here it's one of the most prevalent social medias that you can have, and it's one where you can really curate and engage communities in ways that probably would not be able you would not be able to do on Twitter. Lastly, I think the strategy is important, right? A lot of companies, especially product brands, which is what we would like to work with all the time because they are fairly easy to work with. It's a simpler process. They don't understand utility, and as we're moving from avatar and PFP projects with no utility to some utility to actually making utility the key part of a lot of NFTs, right? They do need to understand utility, and they need to understand also the repercussions of delivering too much of it at a price point of the NFT, right? Eventually, if you keep on delivering physical experiences, products, but also digital experiences, services, and products, you'll end up shooting yourself in the foot as a brand, and eventually the management will say, bottom line is more important, and we are currently losing out on delivering that utility over and over and over again, up to a point where then they trash their brand because for the bottom line they had to stop the utility, and then everyone is angry. So if we work with brands, it's always brand first, brand safety first. There can be no harm to the brand. Second consideration is bottom line, and frankly right now I don't think for brands the few millions they can make do not matter at this point. I think it's about entering the space safely, entering it with integrity, with authenticity, and then later on, if there is a mass market for it, yes, then you can monetize, right, and flick the switch. But before that, it's really about making them understand, bringing them in slowly and in a secure way, thereby building that expertise in the team.
If I could interject, I think it's also about community, right? Is when you have a brand, right, and you're able to represent that through an NFT, right? Maybe you're get into a special Discord. For again, sale, we have token gating, right, where you could have an NFT that gets you into a unique web page that you would only get if you meet certain criteria. I think really engaging in a whole nother level of collaboration behind a vision, an idea. I mean, I've heard a lot as a theme of this whole space.
I think you can even take that one step further, which is brands entering this space have never had that opportunity to actually be able to create a community before, right? Like there was never a way for if I was, I'll give you guys another story, another example. Working with a company called Dream Hotels, and they're launching their first NFT collection. It's like, what would a hotel do with an NFT collection? That's kind of confusing. And when you take a step back, it's like, well, from their perspective, it gives them sort of the opportunity to engage their 1,000 true fans, if you guys are familiar with that idea. And the second thing that they can do is they can create extreme utility. They have hotels all across, the United States. You go off, you purchase one of these NFTs. Not only do you get access into the community, so a whole bunch of other sort of frequent flyers within the Dream community, but you also get access to a whole bunch of perks and luxury experiences within their ecosystem that, unless you were, staying at their hotel, you'd then have to go, buy X, Y, or Z, and they'd get you on the upsell. Where with this, you almost sort of, it's like a VIP access card. And for brands that don't have like a physical product, right? What they're doing is they're basically saying like, hey, how can we enable, create the creation of a community, and then creating this sort of almost like VIP-esque experience within their environment. So I think that's a really unique thing to think about as brands come into this space. They have more things that they can offer the everyday person. I think PFPs were a great use case and almost like a proof of concept for the overall NFT space. But now as we evolve into what comes next for brands, I think it's going to be much different than what we're all used to engaging with every day. It's going to get a lot more in depth. And even from a brand's perspective, you can think about, they don't just want to capture a one-time purchase. Like that's not what they can do. They need much more. They're used to subscription revenue and things like this. So the NFT becomes sort of a gateway into a much more unique experience that I don't think we've really even scratched the surface on yet.
Yeah, from a tech standpoint, if you've already started building your project on, say, Ethereum or with Solidity, for example, Hedera is EVM compatible. So it's powerful enough to take EVM technology and operate it even faster and better. The cost to deploy a smart contract on Hedera is about 20 cents, 25 cents or so. So that's orders of magnitude lower than doing things the old-fashioned way. It's able to leverage that type of performance because it's not a blockchain, it's a DAG. And so if you needed to run a blockchain on Hedera, you could actually do that, but Hedera itself is not a blockchain. And that's what gives it so much more utility, ultimately, and scalability.
That's a really interesting kind of piece of background. Hedera's approach to DLT was really saying, look, legitimate and high demand interest is going to come into this space. Huge organizations, there's going to be huge demand for NFTs being produced at scale, and it needs to be very simple and very easy to do. So there are several primary network services on the Hedera network, and one of those is the Hedera token service. And this allows people to very easily create, deploy, and manage fungible tokens and non-fungible tokens as native assets on the layer one of the network itself. And this is all done without smart contracts. It's done through very simple API calls. And so you have very large organizations who are approaching this space, and they don't really want to outsource a project or bring in blockchain-specific developers. And with Hedera, they can just interact with our SDK interact with our API using SDKs in very standard programming languages. And I think this is really important because Web 2, if we're going to use those definitions, has very, very deep infrastructure that can't just be built overnight in the Web 3 space. Several years ago, I used to work in the Ethereum ecosystem. I was head of business development for a company called Engine, and we actually introduced Microsoft to their first NFTs. Created a whole new brand called Azure Badges for the Azure community. So issuing NFTs to developers to really engage them in the developer community. But what Microsoft started to demand of Engine was a huge amount of infrastructure to manage these tokens, because you can't just send them out into the wild. You need to be able to acknowledge that people hold them and respond to that. And that's what I love about the sales definition of customer relationship management becoming owner relationship management. You really need to have a lot of infrastructure to manage the issuance of these tokens in terms of like teams and your groups, and you can't just have a new joiner being able to send out your most rare NFTs by accident, because once they're out there, they remain there. So in terms of where do you feel Sail has a competitive edge in this space as a Web 2 business fundamentally?
Well, I actually, so we have Sail Resto, right, which is specifically for the hospitality industry. And I think the big thing right now is we're still so early to this space, right? And I sort of use my father, who's a baby boomer, as sort of my guinea pig and test subject, because he's still skeptical on the whole NFT thing, right? It's like, is it a pump and dump scheme? He's saw me do a lot of play to earn gaming, make a lot of money, and then we see what happened of late. But it's how do we create an experience that feels almost Web 2-like for him, but be Web 3, right? And so I think for Sale Resto, that is providing NFT coupons, right? That someone maybe can get a buy one, get one at a restaurant. And like other aspects that can engage a consumer base in sort of the traditional fashion. But then the beauty of the sales solution, right, and NFTs in general, is you have that metadata, right? And so for the restaurant industry in particular, that's huge, right? Is being able to actually capture the various interactions, what Bob or Sheila likes in terms of a drink, right, or in terms of a certain type of food, right? And then I think as that starts to really take hold and people see the convenience in that, I think that's where we start to have this mass adoption.
Well, I think an interesting question for the audience right now would be like, all right, everyone, put up your hand if you own an NFT from a conventional Web 2 brand. So that's maybe like 2 to 3% of the audience, right? So when you just do this in a room, you always learn right away. You're like, oh my God, like this is very very early, right? So I think when you guys put it into perspective for yourselves, it's that A, there's opportunity. B, brands are really trying to figure this out, and C, everything doesn't necessarily have to be about this sort of casino-like mentality that I think we've saw in the last bull run, right? For example, with esports, one of the biggest applications in the esports world is on-chain data, right? So what does that mean? It means that there's a database that people, who are interested, coaches, recruiting esports organizations can query player data from past matches. So data that isn't necessarily needs to be, traded or sold or anything, but essentially just a place where they know the data is immutable. It's pulled out it's extracted from a match, and they can now read that data, and it can't be changed. Right now, esports lives on wikis. If you know anything about a wiki, they can be edited. So one of the biggest things and applications we've seen in esports, and where people get the most excited about that, is really in just the idea of immutable data. So I think we're scratching the surface on what this can look like. And as you guys continue to think about how can we apply and interact this into the world of brands, really think about it from an evolutionary standpoint. We're early. There's a lot of opportunity, and everyone, including everyone on the stage, I'd imagine, we're all still trying to figure that out.
And coincidentally, there's a primary network service on Hedera called the Hedera Consensus Service, which is specifically for that ability to publish immutable data feeds on the network, essentially a decentralized message queue with a topic ID and firing down tens of thousands of updates to that topic, all low cost, very high throughput. So yeah, keep on dropping bits of Alpha League. But I think we're going to try and persuade Eric to do something with competitive esports tournaments and live data feeds, hopefully with some big brands as well. But in terms of being on the front line of building in Web3, Dante, what are you finding is the demand, and how are you responding to the demand from both creators and from consumers on HashAxis? What do they want to see infrastructure-wise on the platform?
Yeah, so creators are always concerned with cost, like how much is it going to cost me if I want to put out an NFT. Creators are typically starving artists to begin with, so they don't necessarily have a lot of money to put into these things. So to make an NFT on Hedera you'll face one of the lowest costs pretty much in the space as a whole. And then they want to know also that the network that they're putting all their time and energy into isn't going to just later disappear or grow defunct, which as some DLTs have already, and we're still very early. But you can make a measure of that by who really is pinning this network, who has leaned in and made a commitment to it, right? So if you look at tech brands, maybe Google, IBM, Boeing, Deutsche Telekom, each one of those brands combined probably have some of the most sophisticated developer and technical minds in the world. if they wanted to, perhaps each one of them could have made their own DLT that they ran in-house, and yet each one of them is running a Hedera node right now. And that's a decision that they made fundamentally on their own, right? So if other brands would follow what the big players in tech are doing and not just follow sort of the VC money smoke show, you'll probably end up in the right place.
What about image with creators? When we work with a lot of folks in the gaming space, one of the biggest concerns that everyone has is its image. Like, what if we do this wrong? How do you guys bridge that?
So we do offer a little bit of insight into what is a good project, what are best practices, how should you go about building a community. A lot of in DLT, a lot of what you do is immutable. So you don't necessarily always get a chance to go back and reverse your decisions. But if you take your learnings from testnet, for example, you can actually test a project. Anyone can access the testnet and deploy it there to see how it comes out.
And question for you, Conrad. Which are the projects that are going to succeed in this sort of Web3 or metaverse space? And perhaps more interestingly, which are going to fail?
Yeah, let me get the crystal ball. No. I think what is definitely important is that Web3 isn't deviating from real world in any way. We're still in real world, and yeah, there is a metaverse presumably taking up a share of our real world experiences, right? But brands will still, as Eric mentioned, will still be looking for subscription models. Will still be looking for ways to extract value also, right? Because they are selling something that people should want, right? And here I think it's the brands that either do not provide value or provide far too much and end up staying on the losing end that will not prevail. I had a little interview yesterday. We talked about brands as well. What we agreed on was basically, there is smaller creators that will always have to work a lot harder, that will always come up with good quality, persistence, but then the people that take them as prodigies or that collaborate with them on levels that they slowly make their names. A lot of young street artists also from the States start to collaborate with Nike and so on, right? And you see that over the time they deliver quality, and do that consistently, and they do it in a way that it appeals to other people that might be then able to bring them up. That's how those smaller brands emerge. The bigger ones that we have already existing and established sportswear brands, again, like Nike, they are in a position to deliver value up to a point where it's beneficial to the people, right? And smaller ones, they have to sadly always go out of their way to be as attractive as a Nike would be. That can hurt, and I think that's the one that we see that either take it too loosely or too seriously and try to compete with the big ones right away. Both extremes aren't good, and staying in the middle.
Yeah, well, you just made me think of Kodak, right, and the advent of the digital camera, right, and how they were so convinced in their model that they literally passed up an opportunity to probably keep their business afloat. And I think here we are again, right, at the sort of precipice of a whole new reality of opportunity, and it will be the brands and businesses that see that and start to implement solutions that will maybe take out some of the big players of today that sort of think it's hogwash.
Yeah, and brands are begging for models, right? The reality is that a lot of people, there's a lot of copycat projects. Just look at the PFP space. It's essentially ever since, whether it's CryptoPunks or Bored Ape Yacht Club, ever since then there has been a slew of just PFP projects. So I think that's one good example of how a new model emerges and a whole bunch of people try to pile on to execute that model. I think in the brand world, what I'm seeing more so than anything is almost these exclusive clubs, sort of like Soho House for brand X, Y, or Z. And that's probably the biggest, where I see the biggest application of brands adopting NFTs is in creating these sort of exclusive VIP style experiences. So I think the other thing to think about as we foray into this space is all brands, and do you see this, Connor? They're looking for a model. They're foraying into this space, and there's no clear thing that they should do. So they're all trying to figure out, what's the model? How do we actually execute this? So because it's still so early, they don't know, and I think it's up to all of us to figure that out.
I would like to give the audience an opportunity to ask some questions. So while I work out how we send mics around, or while you're thinking up some questions, let's just run down the row here. And if each of you could give us, give the audience an idea of what is the next exciting thing coming for your project, and what should people be doing? Should they be signing up to Hash Access now? Should they be kind of following Dropper on Twitter? What is the next exciting thing that's coming up, and how can people get engaged?
Yeah, sure. So initially, Hash Access only traded tokens that were initially minted on the platform, but we just opened up a whitelist. So you can go out there and mint on Hedera yourself. You can submit your token for trading. We do a quick review just to make sure you haven't minted anything that's fraudulent or otherwise troublesome. But we're open for anyone to trade whatever they want, brands, individuals, artists. We want to make this as open as possible. So you can mint with us, or if you mint your own, just submit through our whitelist, and we'll get you in circulation.
Yeah, and for us, the easiest way is just to give us a follow on Twitter at Dropper NFT. I think in the next few weeks and months here, we're going to be announcing some, top gamers, streamers, esports orgs, etc. They're going to be launching some pretty unique projects using our gaming launchpad. And I think end of July is when we kick our inaugural drop off, but we haven't quite announced what that is yet. So if you follow Dropper NFT on Twitter, you'll be able to find out pretty quick here.
All right, and so for sale, we're gonna have a token release probably late fall, which is really gonna add a whole nother layer of utility and gamification. And then with that, brands will also be able to have their own token within that whole ecosystem.
Yeah, for us on the B2B side, it's 3 multi-billion-dollar brands entering the NFT space. Hopefully, also the metaverse still this year with us. The other side is that on the B2C side, we're working on interoperable assets for different metaverses right now, various chains supported and so on. Hedera will be maybe in there, we'll see. But yeah, it's exciting times for us as well.
Wonderful. So do we have any questions from the audience? Oh, quite a few. Let's kick off this person.
Hello. Yeah, so I was wondering if any of these brands have plans to educate potential customers on the Web3 space, or are we merely preparing for that mainstream adaptation?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's inevitable, right? Because the majority of we think of this as such a big market, but the majority of the population still does not know how to set up their wallet, how do they get the tokens, how do they buy, what's a private key. There's going to be a huge market for just purely educational components. Every brand should sort of probably start building out a department within their company that specializes in consumer education around NFTs, if they plan to take advantage of the technology. But yeah, that's a huge opportunity, the educational portion, I would say.
Yeah, a lot of brands are thinking, what are hurdles to entry? And first hurdle is expertise, as you said, or knowledge about how to do it even, right? Know how to set up a wallet, how to buy crypto, how to exchange fiat for crypto in the first place, the whole process, the whole spiel. What's interesting is that education would theoretically be available, right? It's about making sure that brands compile it in a way that it speaks their language and their CI/CD, and it's really on brand with how they communicate. You could expect a French luxury brand to work inherently different than what Adidas would communicate. And we've seen Adidas do decent on education. I think there was a lot of room for improvement, but still getting Bored Apes and G-Money in helped them to understand the space in a way, and it helped them also to build that credibility with the Web3 space. But then the nice side effect was all the other Web2 Adidas users and customers were actually very educated in the end, and we saw that a lot of people that joined the Adidas drop stayed, and that's just what we have seen in the space. We like that education is there because everything else would be irresponsible from brands, and it's the utmost priority again to save the customer, to save your face.
Well, and I think again, coming back to gamifying it, right, is making the experience really something that is engaging and sought after, right? So like again with Sale, we have a custodial wallet, which then you could start to engage in this whole process, and you don't really need to know your private key and all the other things that like come with the learning process, right? And so if you're able to actually give NFTs to people and really make the barrier less like cumbersome, all of a sudden you have this really plethora of opportunity to really help educate. Because I think it comes down to intellectually stimulating people, right, as to what this is, but also physically stimulating them. And then that kind of bridges together.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think what brands are doing right now is capitalizing on that early adoption curve. If you guys think about that, I see brands that I've worked with that have come from Web 2 into Web 3. It's actually been less education and much more so on just, they know that I have a mailing list of 80,000 people, and I bet if we can get 2,500 of them who know what an NFT is, probably have some crypto and can buy, that we can execute a transaction. That's really what I've seen. I think education almost comes as inevitable. The most interesting data point that I have with crypto, just in general, is it's growing faster than the internet did, right? So I think some of these problems that we face today are just going to be, they're not going to be problems in the future. Like, there's going to be less education just because it's growing into our culture and people are adopting this, and it's going to be as ubiquitous as the web. So I think the education piece is almost going to come in a different way than a brand having to, teach people how to mint an NFT, for example.
Yeah, so in today's landscape, data aggregators they go and buy a ton of different data sets and they do a ton of work to link that to a customer, and then they go and sell that so that brands can use that to target, and I think that can be used pretty maliciously. In Web3, you have, once you doxed your ETH address, you have all of that data already pre-compiled. If we're looking at a future where all of your brands interact with you through NFTs, how are you guys thinking about customer data privacy? And protecting them from that data being exposed and misused?
Yeah, there's a reason why so many people like to be anon in the crypto world, right? And I think that goes to your point. When you think about data privacy on chains that are visible, I think it's almost a misnomer, because at the end of the day, if you're putting all this data on chain and eventually you have some link back to your Twitter profile or whatever it might be, then the privacy piece of it sort of melts away. I think what you can do is essentially create some more value around letting an individual own their own data, and rather than Facebook selling your data, you get to opt in to sharing your data essentially, and you might get rewarded for doing that. So that's the way I think about it. Is we got to flip. It's got a paradigm shift that's kind of happening right now. Has it been figured out yet? No, but I think when we think about data privacy, it's much more driven around how do we enable people to share their data with the right people that they actually care about, so they can get value so there's a value exchange. There's not a value extraction, right? And I think those are the two. That's the way I think about it anyways.
And I think also for businesses, just to be clear, you don't need to know who it is, right? You need to know what kind of person it is, but not if that's a Dave or a Mary Ann or whoever, right? It's about knowing this kind of profile I can sell this to, or I can monetize it that way. So privacy shouldn't be an issue if you know what kind of customer profile you have from the data. And there, a lot of brands are very relaxed, because these days you work a lot without names. You have hashes that represent names, and whether you're a Daniel or not, it doesn't matter.
Well, I think what you said is really valid too, right? Is that if someone wants to engage with a brand or business, right, they're going to let you know, and they're going to give you access, because it's going to get them free perks, right? Or some kind of incentive that then there's, again, this synergy between the consumer and the brand that's really enabling that next level of experience. Whereas you use Facebook as an example, we are all the product and have no sort of say in that. Whereas I see the next evolution, really, it is that sort of collaborative model.
And I think you're next, but could we send the mic down to someone at the back, and then we can end up in the middle? Yes, please.
Hey, thank you for coming out. As far as taking brands from Web 2 to Web 3, you're basically helping them onboard their whole people, their whole audience. So, you know, that's a lot. What does it take to change the marketing structure from Web 2 to Web 3? Because now they have to have a Twitter and they have to have a Discord, is what I've been told. And getting that, like, I'm a fine artist, so getting my collectors from the fine art world into the metaverse and like onboarding them onto Discord and onboarding them onto Twitter, like what kind of marketing do you guys do for Web 3?
Someone else first, or should I go?
You can go ahead.
Okay, so in general, marketing in Web3 is inherently different in a sense that it's a lot more community-based, as the guy said. Right now, there's potential for those conversations. Now individuals can really talk to those brands, and the brands stay open to it. The ones that have entered, Lacoste recently did that, and Lacoste did it in a way that they really valued people, right, and opinions. Whether they take that too hard and implement it in the end, not so important, but having that conversation and being open about it, right? And this sort of empathical marketing, the one that is much closer, is a lot more challenging to businesses because your headcount increases by a lot. There's a lot more community managers that you need to have, you know, active conversations with your community with, or you stay away from it. And we always suggest brands to enter Web3 in a way that shows respect to the space, because the community right now is still a bit cutthroat, as we all know, right? If a project is not doing well, or if a brand enters in the wrong way, someone on Twitter discovers that it's gone, or at least it's significantly harmed. And entering it gracefully, and you know, it doesn't need to be a big brand that all know for heritage to say good morning and post an abundance of rocket emojis. It's not necessary, right? It's really about making sure that there's, you know, you come to your friend's house, you're nice, you're respectful, and it's the same here. And in that sense, marketing techniques don't really change. It's the same old stuff. You just remodel it and resell it as something different. But it's really the open conversations and the amount of conversation you have as a brand that is inherently different. And I would say that's what those brands need to understand is that managing communities is the most important right now, and I think that will prevail at least for the next 1 or 2 years, until there's so much people in there that it's barely able to, you know, to really be that kind of open conversation still.
Yeah, well, I think kind of what you're getting at is, I don't think Discord or Twitter are a requirement, right? Like, and that's like, again, like speaking from the sale perspective, we want to provide utility outside of that, right? Where you're just going to be able to go to a restaurant or interact with a brand and get that utility, right? But the Discord and Twitter really is the whole enchilada, right? It is the ability to create this engagement, this community, this ethos that really starts to build on the vibe of the brand, right? Going back to the watching commercials, right? The reason most of us don't watch commercials is it doesn't make us feel anything, right? It's just like some random 30-second ad basically trying to get our attention and to buy something, whereas a community is really like, you're able to then say, hey, Sally, it's great to see you. We actually both like Hendrick's gin, and then start a real conversation, and then, like these events, actually meet them in real life and build upon that.
I think we owe the audience one more question, and then we'll wind it up. If we could replay the Hash Axis video at the end, I think that was...
It's a cool video. It's a great video. It's a great video.
Thank you.
Do we have a question at the back? Yes.
Yeah. Let's stand up. Okay.
And a bit louder.
Yeah. So
it's
it's
two.
been a great discussion. with the ethos, oh, I'm sorry, you stood up too.
Yeah, no, it's
We'll get her too.
With the ethos
Wait,
of
ladies
Web3,
first, ladies first, no? Do we not do that?
Man.
Okay, sorry.
I'll make it quick. So you mentioned that brands are looking for multiple purchases instead of the one-time purchase. What are some use cases you've seen with NFTs and brands, particularly
Oh my
trying
God.
to get multiple purchases?
Yeah, where do we
Yeah.
start?
Where we start. So I love to give this example, right?
We'll do a flash round. Like, we'll
Okay.
give you 30 seconds each.
Quick story. So let's say you're Kanye West, you're doing your Yeezys, right? Immediately they sell out in store, right? And then they get flipped on eBay for $30,000. When that flip occurs, you get a goose egg, right? With digital projects and products, that's not going to happen. Kanye would probably be a billionaire on his first NFT launch, right? Because as that flips and flips and flips and flips, he's going to get passive recurring revenue for the rest of his life, which is the equivalent of what he's making from his music career. So royalties are huge in that sense.
Yeah, like here's a real simple one, membership model, right? So yearly, like Soho House would be a good example, right? Yearly recurring memberships where you're essentially purchasing an NFT that at the end of 1 year you have to like evolve it, you have to churn it into something else to get your the second year, third year, etc. So I think renewal memberships into like clubs is a really good example that I'm seeing a lot of brands adopt.
Yeah, I think just like gamifying the whole experience in terms of you have to collect 10 specific NFTs to then get this in real life item. And a lot of different layered approaches like that, even like using tokens, are going to be the future.
And sorry, I'll cut you off, Conrad. One last question, depending on how quickly we're going to
To the gentleman in the back.
It's nice. He cut me off. Now I get cut off for him. It's good. Fair play.
Cyclical, I like it. With the Web3 ethos being decentralization and giving power back to the people and consumers and not allowing brands to, again, take profiles and target people and adapt how they interact to buy things they might not want, and instead the people get to interact with things they do want. How do you square brands that are coming from Web2 and are used to Hadoop servers that can target a soccer mom to play Candy Crush more, to bring them over into the complete different paradigm where that mom should choose what she does when and how and interact with the brand independently of being tracked?
Yeah, I think all that has to be opt-in, right? Like, because there are plenty of people who want to see more relevant ads, as they call them, and there are plenty of people who are like, please allow me to remain anonymous. So keeping it opt-in is, I think, a great way to do that.
Incentives rule everything, right? You have to create incentives where they benefit more from the new than the old, right? So until models exist where it benefits essentially this new opt-in, I as a consumer can give you access to my data type models, they'll still be stuck in we'll call it Web 2, they'll still be stuck in the old model until they can see a better future. I think it's value at the end of the day. The new system has to be more valuable than the old, and right now the old system is still much more valuable.
And I think we'll have to round it up there because we're at time. Thank you on behalf of the HBAR Foundation and the Hedera community, and also Conrad, who kindly joined us. Thank you for coming to this session. Do follow the HBAR Foundation. Do look into the Hedera network. We've got some amazing examples which are going live in the coming weeks. If you're interested in Web 2 and Web 3 marketing working in perfect synergy together, look out for a cycling fan engagement platform that's launching alongside the Tour de France. Look into Lithos, the AAA game studio that we announced today, which is only going to get bigger and bigger, and obviously look into all the projects on this panel. And we'll finish off with the video.
Thank you guys so much.